Morning, everybody. David Shapiro here with a quick video, just an announcement before I head into my day job. Um, yeah, so Symphony of Thought is available electronically. I've got it up on GitHub. It is available in docx, EPUB, and PDF. I'm particularly proud of the cover. Yeah, so about this book, why would you want to read it? With the advent of large language models, we now have machines that can use verbal reasoning, planning, all kinds of stuff. I know some people are rather skeptical about the intellectual capabilities of large language models. And to them, I just say, spend more time playing with it. And also check out my books. But yeah, so basically, what I realized is that large language models can do pretty much anything as long as it can fit inside of a page or two. So that means we can do brainstorming, we can do planning, we can look at cause and effect. There's all kinds of things that large language models can do. However, their window size is limited. And so what that means is that you have to plumb everything together with some kind of architecture. And so I've been experimenting with this stuff for a couple of years now, specifically GPT-3. I've been doing other experiments for much longer. And yeah, so here's kind of the contents of this book. In part one, I outline the problem. So basically, I look at technological trends, the size of the brain, exponential growth of machine intelligence, and then we talk about machine autonomy. So basically, my assertion is that one way or another, we are going to end up with autonomous machines before too long. And those autonomous machines are going to need to think for themselves. And that is the core purpose of this book, is to talk about creating autonomous thought in machines. And I make the case for modeling ethics and morality, and I talk about how difficult it is. And so basically, the conclusion there is it's too difficult to come up with a single moral framework. So instead, we need a thinking machine that can address all moral problems. It's not about having a single objective function. It's not about having, it's not a matter of choosing deontological ethics or teleological ethics. It's a matter of creating a machine that can do all of it. And then I also talk about the zeitgeist and talk about okay, what's going on in society today that shapes our current thought, and what are some of the drivers of what we're doing. And again, the conclusion here is it's too complex to create a single moral framework. Therefore, the framework we need to create is the thinking machine. So that's the whole point of part one: is why is it that we need a thinking machine? Why is it that we need independent autonomous thought? Then in part two, I talk about kind of the high level components of a thinking machine. And so one thing that I need to clarify up front is that this is not meant to be a blueprint. This is more about the principles of creating a thinking machine. Kind of what are some of the components and paradigms and methods that you can use to create thinking machines. And so, for instance, I talk about the architectural components, what I call the nexus, the conductor, loops, microservices, that sort of thing. And then I talk about principled ideation. So the core of thinking is generating thoughts. And so I call this principled ideation, where I talk about my heuristic imperatives, which is okay, what is the heart of your thinking machine? If it's sitting there in a vacuum, if it's isolated in a jar, what is it going to be thinking about and why? And then there are four criteria that I established as to, okay, what is it that we're looking for when we create this principled ideation? And the first criteria is universal applicability. We need to create a system that is universally valid, and that's no small task. It needs to be flexible and adaptable. Again, because we're looking at all the different paradigms, all the different philosophies and ethics and intellectual dispositions. It is obvious that you need something that is flexible and adaptable. And then third, it needs to be robust. The whole point of creating these machines is that they or creating machines in this way is that they're going to be safe, right? We don't want to accidentally exterminate ourselves or anyone else. We want to, sorry, let me mute my phone real quick. It was supposed to be muted. Um, Sorry about that. Yeah, so it needs to be robust. The stakes could not be higher because if we get this wrong and we go extinct, that we get one shot at that. And then fourth, it needs to be implementable. One point of frustration that I have is that some folks just want to debate endlessly without actually any consideration to what is actually possible with code and machines. And because like some folks say like, oh, well, just teach it ethics. Okay, how? Or just make it a Buddhist machine. Okay, how? Like you can't just kind of speculate. You have to actually have the rubber meet the road, and like actually get code out there, code and data. So then after kind of setting the stage about here, let me zoom out a little bit. After setting the stage with kind of the high level overview of what it takes to orchestrate artificial cognition, part 3 is about thinking ahead. So this is like, assessing a scenario, recalling past events, embedding an agent model, which is an agent model is a sense of self. So an agent model is required for sentience. You have to know what you are and what you're capable of. You predict outcomes and you discern like the best path, and then you plan and address setbacks. So that's part 3, which is kind of thinking ahead or preparing to act. Part 4 is cognitive control. So cognitive control is more colloquially known as like a sense of discipline, right? If you are a disciplined person, you will, one, you'll make good decisions, but two, you'll be able to stay on task, and you'll be able to task switch appropriately. And so there are some components of cognitive control, such as keeping track of topics, changing priorities, self-awareness and metacognition also figure into it. And also, if you notice that it shifts from left to right, it's because this PDF is for printing. Anyways, just notice like you might notice that the alignment changes, and that's because this is the actual printed copy. Yeah, and so then also for cognitive control, you need to be aware of like your identity. You need to be conscious of your beliefs and what evidence you're operating on. So there's a lot that goes into cognitive control. And then part 5, learning. So this is actually the shortest section because, and there's a reason that it's at the end, is because this is where the most work still needs to be done. But I still have a few principles to start with, which is first, record everything. And then 2, label your memories to create automatically curated data sets. And then what that goes towards is self-correction and error detection. So, machine learning, that's pretty well established. No, you ingest data, especially if you have a robot with cameras and eyes, having data is not going to be the problem. Labeling that data and curating data sets to train new models, that's the problem. But more importantly, if you have an autonomous machine, it's going to need to self-correct and detect errors, both in itself and outside of itself. And so, yeah, that is an overview of the book. The reason I'm going ahead and releasing it as electronically is because looking at the numbers, most people just download it electronically. All of my other books, I've only sold a handful of like physical copies. The paperback will be available soon, but like 99% of people just read it digitally. So there you go. It's out there. Symphony of Thought on my GitHub. You can probably just search for it. But yeah, Symphony of Thought, Orchestrating Artificial Cognition, out now. Stay tuned for the paperback. Thanks for watching.